SaaS Backwards is sponsored by Austin Lawrence Group, specializing in demand gen for SaaS. It sure is noisy. I deleted 100 emails from vendors just this morning. Your buyer has gotten better at ignoring you, and you're gonna need a big idea if you want to cut through all that clutter. Austin Lawrence is just the right agency to help you find it. So if your campaigns are falling on deaf eyeballs, let's talk. Visit austinlawrence.com today and let's build something bigger.
Welcome to the SaaS Backwards podcast, where we reverse engineer the success of fast-growing SaaS firms and explore strategies CMOs and CEOs are using to drive their businesses forward.
Welcome to SaaS Backwards, podcast that helps SaaS CEOs and CMOs to accelerate growth and enhance profitability. Our guest today is Mang-Git Ng, founder and CEO of Anvil. Anvil is a paperwork software development kit for product teams building software to automate document-based processes directly into their product. Did I get that right?
I think you did. Good job.
Excellent. Well, why don't you expound a little bit on your company and background and tell us how you came up with the idea for the company and where it is today.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe to start, the company Anvil, as Jason mentioned, is a paperwork software development kit. That's kind of how we think of ourselves. If you're a technology company, any kind of company that has to deal with document-based processes and you want to digitize it, bring it online, Anvil gives you all of those components to really easily build and embed it into your product. So whether you need to build a very nice online data capture interface for capturing information, generating all of the documents, sending it through e-signature, and then taking all of that data and storing it in your database, Anvil gives you the pieces and all of the nice integration points to help you build your product faster and really transform your business to a digital business faster. In terms of my own background, I've been in tech for about 15 years now, worked at small companies and large, started at Cisco Systems, so a very large company, but then quickly joined a bunch of smaller startups, including Dialpad and Loom, which was a photo sharing app back in 2014, not the video recording one that you know about today. Loom was acquired by Dropbox, where I spent a good chunk of my time. I also spent some time at Flexport as well, mostly as a software engineer, mostly as a product-focused software engineer. In founding Anvil, this was a journey that happened maybe about 4 to 5 years ago. And the realization for myself was really when I was applying for a mortgage and we were trying to shop around for various mortgage rates with local banks. And every one of them would send me a PDF with very sensitive questions on it and say, please fill this out and submit it back to me over email. So these PDFs would ask for your name, your address, your social security, your bank account number, your pretty much if this got out, you were screwed. And so that was the kind of like the initial inkling that something was broken and how do we make it better? And technologists, that these things can be done online. That there's TurboTax out there today. Why is this process not like TurboTax? So we set out to effectively build a product that allows people to take these offline document-based processes and make them online, make them completely digital, make it mobile friendly with minimal code and also scalability. So that's kind of how we started off with Anvil.
Very good. And today, what's the size of the company, in terms of funding, employees, that kind of thing?
Yeah. So the company's 13. We are, we've raised a couple rounds of funding at this point. And yeah, we're just looking forward to 2024 to grow.
So I really want to delve into the issue of product market fit, because I know that that's something that plagues a lot of startup CEOs. And I know you've got a great story with both pitfalls to avoid and some successes that come out of that. But why don't you start giving me an overview of, the problems that you had finding that initial product market fit?
Yeah, I think there's a few things here. Initially, we were trying to sell to an industry that was not very tech forward. They were not the early adopters. And so they certainly had a lot of paperwork and a lot of documents, but they really didn't see anything wrong with it, right? They thought of, the documents being online or in a shared drive as like the most automation they could possibly do with technology. And so our first target market was wealth advisors. I guess that should have been an indicator that they're not very tech forward, but every single wealth advisor has to open accounts on behalf of their clients. And these accounts are open through a very complex set of documents that have a lot of rules, that have a lot of kind of tribal knowledge as to how to fill them out. And oftentimes advisors didn't even know if they filled it out correctly until the account opening document was rejected by the TD Ameritrades, the Schwabs, the custodial banks. So, we did have some initial success. We found a customer in this space that opens accounts for a lot of wealth advisors. They're kind of like the back office. And we worked with them to build out our first product, which was using Anvil to build out this online account opening process. And we thought we could go replicate it. And we really struggled to go replicate that sale, I would say. So,
Was there anything else existing in the space when you developed it, or did you really have to give a frame of reference to the customer as you're communicating it?
yeah, I think there's some. It was still a pretty nascent category. And I would say it's probably still a nascent category. The competitors that we really came up against were like DocuSigns or the signature providers. And I think the frame of reference for customers that we really had to help educate them on was DocuSign is really the final step. Yes, you can open up a DocuSign and type into the PDF and fill out each field manually, but it's really the final step. It's the acknowledgement that this information is correct, that you agree to open your account to do whatever it is you're trying to do. But there's a lot of work ahead of that needs to happen in order to prepare the documents. And so a lot of the advisors, what they were doing was sending out a Word doc and saying, please fill out all the fields. And then they would manually transcribe it into the account opening docs because their clients were not going to understand how to fill out the account opening docs. And in that process, I think the big realization that I started being able to articulate was paperwork is really a vehicle in which data is being captured and transferred and agreed upon. That's the goal of paperwork in most cases, right? Even like red line contracts. It's like, here's a set of rules that we all agreed on and we both signed it. For Anvil specifically, we focus on templatized documents that need to be filled out in a consistent manner. And we make it easy to put the data onto those documents, but we also make it easy to take that data captured on a web form front end and put it directly into your database in a structured, formatted, validated way. So it eliminates a lot of this rekeying, this data entry work that happens when you don't capture the data in a structured format to begin with.
When you were describing the problem before, it sounded like you run up across maybe not competitors, but status quo or doing nothing, because this sounds like it requires a lot of change management within the organization to do it. So how do you overcome that challenge? Because I think a lot of companies have that same challenge where, it's just too much work.
Yeah, that is a hard lesson that we certainly have learned. Oftentimes it's not about the product, it's about the people. It's all people problems. Like somebody doesn't want to spend the effort, or it's effortful to learn a new system. And there's a certain level of pain that a customer needs to be experiencing before they're willing to start looking for solutions. And so, yes, there's a lot of change management. I think there's just also ways that people have been doing things for decades. Paperwork is the standard way of doing things for a lot of industries. And so there's hesitancy to change. For ourselves specifically, I think one thing we did was kind of move to a different segment of people that we're trying to sell to. Like I said, wealth advisors are not necessarily the most tech forward, but there are other areas in the world that have a higher concentration of tech forward people. So first of all, is moving into an area, a vertical, an industry that has more tech forward people and understand kind of like the benefit of bringing all of this online. And then I think the second part is really just being there and helping them make the change. If you find somebody that's excited about the change, a lot of times, even after the sale, like we are hands-on in there, helping them deploy, helping them use Anvil, helping them learn Anvil. We might even be helping them build some workflows initially to get started and get ramped up, and also use that as a teaching moment to show them how the product works. So I think those are some of the ways we've managed to get around the change management. But yeah, it's a lot of hand-to-hand combat, I would say.
When you're selling that, how many people do you find are involved in the typical decision-making process?
Yeah, great question. It varies. I think if we were to like oversimplify the model, I would say there's a couple of key stakeholders. Oftentimes there's a senior level person in probably the product management org, especially for selling to technology companies, where they have the ability to make product-wide decisions, I would say. Because the way Anvil is implemented in our organizations that buy us is that Anvil is presented to our customer's customer. So the web form that's built in Anvil is then styled and embedded to look like our customer's website product. And then whole thing gets presented to the end user. And so you really need somebody who's high enough up that can make that kind of decision. Like, no, the customer is going to see this experience and it's okay that it's powered by Anvil. I think that's one thing. The other decision maker is oftentimes the engineer. They're the one that's building. They take these workflows and integrate into their database. From their system, they're triggering, new workflows to be started or closed. They're pre-populating these workflows with the data that they already have. They're storing the documents into their own database. So if the engineer doesn't like the experience, has a hard time understanding our product, has a hard time integrating, they might not have buying power, but they certainly have veto power. So that's another stakeholder. And then I would say a common stakeholder is honestly somebody who, this could be the founder, this could be a C-level. It's somebody who's really trying to drive forward a vision. And they understand that part of that vision requires using technology. And they have a say in it as well. They might be the final signer on the PO. You might not interact with them at all until the purchase order, or they might be one and the same with the product manager that I described earlier. It might be the same person.
And then once you identified some of these more tech forward industries, how did you then drill down into those and settle on the right industry to at least start selling into before expanding greater?
Yeah, I think we kind of maybe did it the other way around, unfortunately. We kind of looked at like who was signing up for Anvil and who was using Anvil. And then we would notice patterns in pockets, right? And so for ourselves, we saw interest in the human resources workforce management space. So high volume hiring, I would say. That's like, temp workers, temp agencies, and technology companies building software for that vertical. That was one end of the spectrum. We also saw a lot of people in the insurance space. Insurance has a lot of documents that need to be generated, processed, signed, and Anvil was a tech-first solution for them to build into their products. So some of our customers include Pathpoint, Send, and Vouch, where they use Anvil in various ways, but it's all part of their core product in a lot of ways. And there's a long tail of a bunch of other verticals. So real estate, fintech. And I think the hardest part is giving up on some of these, as in not focusing on them, not saying we don't service them, not saying we don't want to sell to them. It's just like you have to focus in on a couple of verticals to start so you deeply understand the challenges and are aware of the language they use so you can speak to them in an easy manner.
Well, you talked a lot in our pre-call about how starting out with not much sales experience and having to do a lot of experimentation. So can you tell me a little bit more about that? And also what you just said, it sounds like you did a lot of the research based on your freemium product, which is definitely a good approach. But I'm wondering, did that exist in the beginning, or have you always had the freemium product, or did you just have to, pound some doors and see if you could get some responses?
I think it's an evolving journey. We didn't really have a freemium product to start. I think that was what we were trying to build towards. So all of our early customers were really door pounding, relationship driven. Some of our biggest early customers are, people that I've worked with at previous jobs. So that's really how we started. We then launched a freemium kind of model. And what we've seen is that freemium is interesting because some products are very well suited for freemium. People can see it, play with it, sign up, pay us. But some products within the Anvil ecosystem is not well suited for freemium. And specifically, I'm thinking like workflows. It's such a powerful and all-encompassing tool that there isn't really it's not in the popular vernacular yet, I would say. People know to go search for e-signature tool. People know to go search for, API for PDF. But how do people search for like online document-based workflow automation, with structured data? There just isn't a commonly agreed upon vernacular there yet. So I would say really a lot of it is just knocking on doors. And we saw some patterns with our freemium, but like, I think it's just kind of doing a review on who you're selling to and who's been buying fairly regularly.
And it sounds like a lot of your market may have problem awareness, but not necessarily solution awareness. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. I think the other thing that we compete against often is point solutions. And point solutions, by nature of being a point solution, they're just easier to articulate the problem you're solving. And Anvil can often solve it better because you don't have to force your customer to adapt to how your point solution is built. Anvil allows you to kind of build it the way you want it. But that makes it a very difficult kind of exploration process to really get to the root of the problem that they're trying to solve and then helping them solve it. Yeah. So I think that is a challenge.
So it definitely sets up a unique go-to-market challenge as well, right? Because there's not a subset of your TAM that is, in the market for this product, or they may be in the market for a subset of the product that you have to grasp onto. So how did you incorporate that into your marketing and go-to-market strategy in general?
Yeah, I think it's a constant work in progress. I think we always do better on it. In fact, we just had a discussion about this, earlier this morning. But I think a lot of it is like trying to latch onto existing categories and then using that opportunity once they're a customer, using that opportunity to kind of show them what else is capable within Anvil. I think that's a big part of it. We do release a fair amount of content on our website. Probably could do a lot more. Probably could be a little bit more targeted with the type of content we release. Honestly, podcasts like this is great because it gives me a long window to explain it in as many words as I want, So podcasts are great. And then just, I think frequency, honestly, is like frequency, just posting about various aspects of Anvil, of life at Anvil repeatedly. And so that people kind of like can slowly put together the pieces themselves over time.
And today, what does your sales team look like? I'm assuming that you've moved past like the founder-led sales, and what did that look like now?
The founder should always be selling. He should always
That's true. I commend you for that. Yes.
Yeah. So our sales team today, we have a 2-person sales team, and then we have a VP of sales that kind of helps manage and runs the team. And then I'm still involved as well at both in pipeline calls and trying to be as supportive and helpful as I can be whenever it's a high level customer, or like maybe I'm connected to somebody there. I'm always ready to jump up there as well.
And then how are you getting your opportunities? I mean, are most of them coming through the freemium product? Do you do, an outbound process? Do you have inbound with content, mix of all those? What's the solution there?
It's a mix also. I think a lot of it is we do get a fair amount of inbound. They sign up for a product and they usually start using kind of like the PDF API or the e-signature tool, pretty self-serve. But whenever it's a workflow thing, kind of like the same challenge I described at the top, which is it's hard to describe. You kind of have to get them on a call or be in front of them to explain to them why workflow might actually be the solution they're looking. So we do get top of funnel through inbound. It's a mixture of ads. It's a mixture of press. It's a mixture of SEO. I would say we rank fairly highly for a couple things. And then we also do outbound in the sense of in-person events, conferences, that kind of outbound. We have found that email outbound has not been super successful. And maybe it's a function of just the sheer number of emails being sent these days. It seems to have diminishing returns. Yeah, but like nothing really beats in person, I would say. Like in person, you can read the person live, you can kind of understand where their challenges are. And even if it's not a sale, you build that relationship and the understanding of the types of challenges they do face. So maybe it gives you a more holistic picture of the industry they're targeting.
And how did you manage that during COVID when everything shut down then?
Oh man, like we just didn't, that was a point in time where Anvil was not doing in-person outbound, I would say. We did some calls, we would do a lot of outreach, but the in-person stuff really happened, I would say, in the second half of 2022. And when that took off, there was a period of time Or for like 6 weeks. My weeks was, Monday through Thursday in Vegas. Thursday night, fly back to San Francisco and spend a weekend with my wife and dog, and then turn around and fly right back to Vegas. And, I can't say I'm the biggest fan of Vegas, but I now know my routine there, how to navigate it and what to do.
Most of your shows were in Vegas.
That's where the conferences seem to be, whether it's real estate, insurance, finance. Yeah, the conferences are pretty much all in Vegas. I love it when it's in New York. The energy in New York is amazing. And in person is alive and well in New York. I think I went to a bar a year and a half ago on a Wednesday night. It was standing room only, and like San Francisco's dead, so that was nice. But yeah, I like it when there's maybe one in a different city. I get excited about that.
Yeah, interesting. So tell me about raising funding, because I think you got about 10 million total now. What did that look like?
Man, it's been a long journey, I would say. We're pretty fortunate that I knew I wanted to work on a startup of my own at some point, but I did spend a good 10 years or so in the industry ahead of time, and really feel fortunate about my Dropbox network, I would say. So I lucked into Dropbox. I always joke that like the first time I tried to interview at Dropbox, I didn't pass the phone screen. And the second time they acquired the company I was working at. So they ended up paying more for me. But that Dropbox network is really tight, and a lot of them became VCs. So that was nice. Yeah. And I think I'm lucky that fortunately, like I've been part of companies that have afforded me certain privileges in terms of pedigree or just like stereotypes of how people think about you as a person who's worked at XYZ company. And so that helped a lot in terms of fundraising initially. It also helped in terms of just getting in front of VCs that you want to talk to. You find somebody in your network that's connected, ask for an intro, and people are always very willing to help in making those introductions. But yeah, I didn't realize how important building those relationships was to maybe smoothing out the fundraising journey.
And how recently was your latest fundraise?
Our latest fundraise was back in end of 2022.
Okay. And how has all that kind of changed your go-to-market strategy?
How has it changed our go-to-market strategy? I think we've certainly staffed up a little bit more on the go-to-market side. We've traditionally been a very engineering-heavy organization. Now we're a bit more half and half. So that's part of it. I think it's allowed us to do some more experimentation, try some different things. And, I think TBD, we'll see. I think we're always trying new things.
If you had it all to do over again, what would you do differently?
Oh man, I had it all to do over again. A lot. I would do a lot different. I heard a saying recently where it's like first time founders focus on product, second time founders focus on distribution. I think I would have focused on distribution a lot earlier than I did.
What do you mean by the distribution?
Distribution meaning like sales. Where do you sell? How do you sell? How do you find more customers to sell to? Channel partnerships, co-marketing. Like, how do you get your product to market? I think that is honestly, in my opinion, the harder problem than building a product. Because in my opinion, like, if you can dream up a product and you're an engineer, you can almost always build it. You just got to figure out like, software development and product development from a pure building perspective is very highly deterministic. You do X, Y happens. The harder part is like getting somebody to want to use your product, getting somebody to be interested in your product, putting your product in front of somebody and like seeing if they actually can figure out how to use it. Cause like these are all soft human things that are squishy and like definitely not deterministic and definitely a little bit more difficult to measure. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of what I mean. Like, I would have spent more time trying to figure that out instead of figuring out how to build the product.
And as we're coming up on the new year here, what are you either excited about or nervous about 2024?
Oh man, Fed rate cuts. I heard they're going to do a bunch of rate cuts. So I think tech is definitely a little bit more excited probably about rate cuts than maybe other industries, just because when the cost of capital is high, I think it certainly impacts the early stage technology market quite a bit. And I think end of 2022, beginning first half of 2023 was definitely a scary time in tech. Even more recently, like you still see layoffs and you hear about like Bird going out of business. So maybe we'll be back to the overly exuberant times, but maybe tempered a little bit with some, recent learnings. But no, I think 2024, I'm excited about really going hard to market, really driving up the sales of our core use case, which is our workflow product. I think there's a lot that Anvil can do to help transition the world off of PDFs and documents. And that's our goal. We think most people agree that the future of work on PDFs is not on printed paper, is not on, wet signatures or even e-signatures. But you could build the future and wait for people to catch up, or you could build the bridge from the past to the future. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to build a bridge. So when we get to that future, hopefully we can accelerate it. They're already using Anvil. We can help them then take the next step, cross the next bridge at that point. So very excited about just continuing to drive that vision.
Very good. Well, I think that's a good place to land our episode. Thanks a lot for participating. If listeners want to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
I'm going to go on a limb here. You can reach out to me directly at Mang-Git@useanvil.com. That is Manggit at useanvil, useanvil.com. And, for anybody trying to sell me something, if you can't find my email now that it's out in the wild, that's on you. It's there. But yeah, no, you can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn as well. Not a lot of Mang-Gits, pretty easy to find. And yeah, I'm always excited to learn more about your document process, kind of how you envision building a solution for your document process, and see if Anvil can help.
Fantastic. And if listeners want to get to me, I'm on LinkedIn at LinkedIn/IN/Jason Myers. That's MYERS, Content Maven. I do make it easier to find that way. There are more Jason Myerses than there are Mang-Gits.
If you find another Mang-Git, please send them my way. I would love to create a Mang-Git club of two,
You've got a unique name, so that definitely has some advantages in terms of findability.
Yeah.
Maybe some disadvantages if you're getting too many sales calls.
In terms of privacy, yes, for sure.
Also, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, please do so. It's available wherever podcasts are distributed. Mang-Git, great job. Thanks for participating with us today.
Thank you, Jason. It was a pleasure being on the podcast today.
Thanks for listening to the SaaS Backwards Podcast, brought to you by Austin Lawrence Group. We're a growth marketing agency that helps SaaS firms reduce churn, accelerate sales, and generate demand. Learn more about us at www.austinlawrence.com. You can email Ken Lempet at kl@austinlawrence.com about any SaaS marketing or customer retention subject. We hope you'll subscribe, and thanks again for listening.